There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Steve Bannon, as the head of Breitbart News, is now sitting at the top of the food chain for the United States National Security Council. This is We the People. Joseph Goebbels was the German politician who rose to power in Hitler's Third Reich. He was one of Hitler's most devoted followers and was appointed to the position of Reich Minister of Propaganda once the Nazis took power. He advocated for harsh discrimination, which included the extermination of the Jewish people. He had a deep hatred of Jews. And some have said that it was Goebbels who convinced Hitler to enact the final solution. He took charge of the media and the arts, controlled the flow of information and the news media within the Nazi regime. It was Goebbels who initiated the book-burning campaign in an effort to cleanse Germany of non-German opinion and thought. It was all about shaping a message, about programming the German national zeitgeist, and convince all good Germans that they were superior and deserved to reign over the rest of Western Europe. Is Steve Bannon Donald Trump's version of Joseph Goebbels? Well, let's look into it. Bannon has a huge influence over the so-called alt-right, which is really nothing more than a white supremacist racist movement, using his website as the new media for the alt-right. And he's on record as saying that very thing. He has admitted it. Once he's gotten into the White House, he took on the title of political advisor. And some of news reports are saying that he has had a hand in recent executive orders and even going so far as to write some of them himself. But then I can't confirm that firsthand. One of those executive orders is expected to gut the National Endowment for the Arts. And we've all become really aware of the muzzle the Trump administration has put on the EPA and the Department of Interior, as well as other departments within the U.S. government. Basically every government which releases scientific information to the general public at large. I don't know about you, but this sure sounds like the move of an authoritarian regime. Naomi Wolf of The Guardian recently wrote an article listing 10 steps to building an authoritarian regime in America. And it's a frightening thing to consider. Follow along with me for a moment, and you can decide if Trump and his minion, Bannon, are seeking to take over the country. Step 1. Invoke a terrifying external and internal enemy. Well, that one's easy. The war on terror. The Muslim ban, anyone? Step 2. Create a gulag. A massive prison which you can imprison your political enemies in. And while Trump has already gone on record as wanting to expand and strengthen Guantanamo, and he has stated on television news interviews that he sees nothing wrong with putting U.S. citizens in Gitmo. Step 3. Develop a thug caste, or in other words, a street-level militia, which you can use to carry out your aims of oppressing those you wish to silence, and even killing those who stand in your way. Well, Bannon certainly has fired up organizations like the white supremacist movement and the KKK, and they're more than capable of carrying out this task. Step 4. Set up an internal surveillance system. Well, shit. Thanks to Eric Snowden, we are all quite aware of the existing NSA spying capability that's already in operation within our U.S. government, and quite possibly spying on U.S. citizens right now. Step 5. Harass citizens groups. Now, this will involve agencies like the FBI, which currently is run by a gentleman that you may not be aware of, whose name is Jim Comey. Sound familiar? We don't really know what his political leanings are, do we? Well, the FBI would use old Hoover trades of inserting undercover operatives into protest groups to gather intelligence and vilify those groups in the eyes of the public. Step 6. Engage in arbitrary imprisonment and release. Well, this might be going on right now. During the protests at the inauguration, there were several reporters who were arrested and charged with felony rioting offenses because they had the nerve to report protesters. Step 7. Target key individuals. Now, this is in regards to attacking your political enemies. And again, it may very well already be happening. Remember the woman who was suing Trump for sexual assault when she was 13 years old? She has gone underground and disappeared. No less than 4 people have resigned from the State Department, and none of them have had the nerve to speak out in public about their resignations. One has to wonder why. Step 8. Control the press. Now, Trump is working on this one right now, and he's been working on it since the beginning of his campaign. The Nazis called it Lügenpresse. This roughly translates into the lying press. Now, we all know Trump likes to call the press liars. As a matter of fact, it's pretty much the period at the end of every one of his sentences. The next step will be to enact laws like the one he talked about during the campaign that, quote, would open up libel laws, which would effectively muzzle media outlets from reporting anti-Trump news. Step 9. Dissent equals treason. Bluntly put, speak against the regime, go to prison. This means you create laws that make it illegal to speak against His Royal Hind Ass Emperor Trump. Basically, it's eliminating the free speech clause in the Constitution. We know he doesn't like free speech. So you can expect him to try doing something like this. And not much longer from now, since he's not been getting a lot of good press lately. Finally, step 10. Suspend the rule of law. In our country, this would basically amount to suspending the Bill of Rights. And if Trump ever got this far, we're finished. The democracy we were all born in will have been destroyed. It will cease to exist. Is this Steve Bannon's plan? Is this Donald Trump's plan? Is it Mike Pence's plan? Because I always want to remind you never to forget Mike Pence is a fundamentalist evangelical Christian who believes in the dominion theory of Christian rule over our country. But I'll talk about that in another broadcast. I am not telling you that this will happen. I am telling you that if you do nothing, you will be helping them to take democracy away from us. Trump has already done a great deal of harm to the American democracy and our worldwide reputation, and we must fight back every single day, in every way possible, and in every city in this country. I am doing my small part with this podcast, with my blog, and my written commentary. At the moment, that's all I can do, but I will never stop, I will never be silenced, and I will never retreat. I will die before someone takes my freedom away from me and the right to speak out against an authoritarian dictator. I am not fighting just for myself. I am fighting for my family, my son, my stepdaughters, and my grandchildren. And if you haven't already done so, I suggest you get off the couch and start doing something yourself. Let's not forget it was silence that allowed the Nazis to take power in Germany in the 30s. It was the people who did nothing while others around them suffered at the hands of the brown shirts. I end this with one of my favorite poems that directly relates to the situation we are currently now in. It was written by a Protestant pastor who lived during the Nazi regime in Germany, a man named Martin Niemöller. It reads, "When the Nazis came for the communists, I remained silent. I was not a communist. When they locked up the Social Democrats, I remained silent. I was not a Social Democrat. When they came for the trade unionists, I did not speak out. I was not a trade unionist. When they came for the Jews, I remained silent. I was not a Jew. When they came for me, there was no one left to speak out." Martin Niemöller was arrested by the Nazi regime and held in a concentration camp. Fortunately, he survived the war. Please subscribe to the channel, look us up on Facebook, and join the blog at WTPAmerica.org. You can send me hate mail at WTPAmerica@hotmail.com. And if you'd like to become a patron, look us up on patreon.com/WTPAmerica. My name is Alan Garrett. This is We the People. List.